we have some breaking news from our favorite company that we love to hate and hate to love, Apple and their AI. They have some things that have been rattling people a little bit this week, and that is the fact that they have made an announcement on when we are finally getting the updated, renovated AI version of Siri. Now, this is something a lot of people are thrilled about. I, for one, with my iPhone, am so excited. I've been wanting this Siri, and ever since ChatGPT came out, Connor and I have both been pretty much railing against three main companies. That is the Google Assistant, the Amazon Alexa, and of course, Apple Siri. And we're like, why are these companies not just grabbing an API to ChatGPT, sticking it in there with like an AI voice model? I mean, if you want it to be really ghetto, you go grab 11 Labs, you go grab ChatGPT, you stick them together, and you just have a renovated version of these things. Now, of course, there was these issues, Google being like, look, we can't just grab those off the model, because if there's a hallucination and you're trusting the Google Assistant, like da-da-da-da-da. So like, I totally get that. But nonetheless, it took them, I felt like, too long. It was like 2 years before these things really got a big upgrade. I mean, we're just hearing about the new Alexa Plus that's going to be coming out. But anyways, when they did come out, we said this in the past, the Alexa Plus, I was thrilled about it. Big updates. So finally, we have the third of these three big companies to figure out their assistant, and that is Apple. And the news we've just received is that the Siri assistant is being delayed. And you might be asking, oh no, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months? No, this is being delayed till 2027. My jaw is on the floor. Connor, what do you make of this?
I don't even get it. And listen, folks, we love Apple. All my products are Apple. Apple is the greatest company in the last like 20 years, if you ask me. I just don't understand it. I mean, so when Jaden's talking about like, why can't they just grab an API? Like, first of all, let's consider the news, right? What they're saying essentially is that, yes, they're not going to be have Siri available until 2027. After these giant launches of, hey, here comes Apple Intelligence, like buy the new iPhone, all that sort of stuff, right? That didn't happen, and that's not happening. But then to get this news, I hope we all appreciate, anybody listening to the sound of my voice right now, how 2027, it's an eternity. It's an eternity away. Like, we're going to have robot dogs by that point. So I don't know how this is going to work. So a couple of things on this. First of all, why it happened. And second of all, what Jaden is just referencing about solutions, and they must try to find a solution here. So first of all, what's happening? So they are going to kind of keep doing these, interim updates, right? Like 18.5, which is in May. 19 is supposed to have like all the underlying architecture for Siri that they're laying down. But here's the big problem, right? The problem is that Apple has these sort of, in the architecture of this, there's sort of like these two different systems that work. They're sort of like the simple, it's like Siri's brain is kind of split into two parts, right? So you have this sort of small, always on brain, which is you say, hey, Siri, what's the weather? Things like that. It kind of like wakes it up. It sets alarms. It tells you all, just super, super simple stuff. The other part of the brain here is it's the powerful one. It's like, the cloud-based thing. It's the really complex thing. It's like, hey, Siri, talk to me about, what did Hamlet mean when he blah, blah, blah? Or, hey, can you do this complex task? And also the personalization layer around like, hey, I recognize your voice. This is who you are. All that sort of stuff, right? So what Apple's having trouble with, it seems, is essentially marrying these two architectures together. So that's extremely complicated. I get that. But again, this is Apple. So first of all, it's kind of interesting to know why it's taking them so long. But more importantly, as Jaden said, we have been ever since we heard about ChatGPT, we're like, oh, great. All these devices that we've been struggling with forever. I have Siri turned off on my phone, but the Amazon Alexa, Siri, right? Because Siri was just annoying, right? So why not just plug this in? And so when Jaden says, why not grab an API? Just in case, like, I know there's a lot of lay people out there. When we talk about like an API, we're just talking about this, Siri essentially using a different tool, right? That's kind of like an API. Again, sorry if you already know this, but an API is like if you have like a weather app, right? The API is essentially the connector that connects it to the National Weather Service or something like that. So you may hear the word API a lot and be like, I don't really get that. But it's the device that allows it to sort of like plug into the National Weather Service. And then the API for the Weather Service allows Connor's weather app to show you the weather. So when you have APIs, the reason it's so important is because a lot of tools that people are building right now use underneath tools like ChatGPT and things like that. They're like, oh, I have this travel agency online and I want to have natural language. So you use the OpenAI's API key essentially to power your thing. That's what we mean by API. So when Jaden is saying, look, why don't we just grab an API? Like, why wouldn't Apple just grab an API and sort of just say like, look, we're just going to pay OpenAI we're going to use it. We have 2 billion users. We'll make the money back, all that sort of stuff. And it just feels like Apple's like, no, we're going to have our own intelligence. Now, Amazon, to your point, came out with their huge foundation models kind of out of nowhere. Nova, I think it's called. And I was like, wow, right. But of course they do, right? Of course, these huge companies are building their own foundation models, but Apple hasn't. It's absolutely puzzling. They're going to have to come up with a solution. Aiden, give us that. First of all, what's interesting about this to you, beyond what we've just talked about, but also like, I don't know, any solutions for this?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is where we're getting all this information from, and that is from a reporter named Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg. So, like, there's some percentage of a grain of salt you have to take these reportings with, because this isn't like Apple released an official memo like, we are delayed until 2027. So it's insider info. It's pretty good info. These guys are pretty on top of it, but I will just say, like, it's from a reporter. It's not an official thing.
Report, true.
Right. And so the other thing that I want to say is, so what he is saying is essentially that this new modernized conversational version of Siri, it's not coming out until iOS 20, which is slated to come out in 2027. What's interesting to me here is that we are going to be getting different versions, like we are going to be getting different updates of Siri in the meantime. It's not like nothing is going to change and I'm going to keep my Siri disabled and it's going to be broken until 2027. Hopefully we will be getting some stuff in the meantime. And the big thing that everyone's looking out for, of course, is all of the integrations with Apple Intelligence. Now, a new version of Siri is supposed to be coming out in May. Apple has their big update. They're not saying everything that's going to be incorporated into that, but allegedly it's going to be in May. We're going to be getting Apple Intelligence. So I'm excited about that. I think that's been a long time coming. And this was announced nearly a year earlier. This is like May last year that this Apple Intelligence stuff was announced. And I'm still waiting for the next, big conference update, whatever. I think it might be their dev conference or something where this might actually get rolled out. You mentioned the Siri and the two brain problem. I think this is essentially what they're having a hard time merging together. But there's a couple things that are happening. Apparently, there's going to be what is known as LLM Siri. And LLM Siri is going to be announced at the Worldwide Developer Conference. This is in June, and then they're going to be launching it in spring of 2026. So we still have these delayed timelines. Like when we tell you about 2027, and you're like, oh my gosh, 2 years. Getting the LLM Siri in 1 year, and then all of the advanced features that they're going to be trying to be building towards, getting developers on board, tying apps into it, and like actually making it really useful in a year after that. And then maybe this year we might be getting some of their current out-of-the-box Apple Intelligence features. The way I like to think about this, when you think about Apple Intelligence today, it's kind of like, and okay, the one thing I'll try to be generous to Apple. My generous to Apple is like, they have a big ecosystem. They have a lot of developers and apps that do a lot of different things on their platform. And so sometimes it can be hard to tie everything together and make everyone work together when it's like, they're like, well, we want to get like Expedia integrated into it so you can book your flights really easy. But like the Expedia team needs time to develop the app and all the integration and all this stuff. So like that's I guess that's like the case for why it could take long. That's my generous case. Of course, there's ways to make all of this stuff faster. You had OpenAI 2 years ago now. Can you believe It was 2 years ago? They rolled out their plugin store. And on the plugin store, they had Expedia tied in and working. Like these companies, I do not think need 2 years to do the integrations. Anyways, the problem that we're seeing, and the way I like to think about it, is that Apple Intelligence now that we're about to get tied into Siri currently is kind of like the stock apps that come on the iPhone. So when you get your iPhone, there's a bunch of, you get your weather app, you got your calculator. Those apps you can kind of think of as working with this out of the box. Like Apple's like, look, this is our ecosystem. We can build some stuff into there, some cool features. And it might not even work with all of them, but it'll work with some of them. Then there's the next layer where they're like truly building their own LLM. And I think that they were maybe trying to get away from just relying on their partnership with OpenAI. Maybe they wanted to roll their own Apple Intelligence LLM, which begs a whole nother set of questions, how even Meta and Google and whatever, Amazon, come on, Amazon's got Rufus AI on Amazon. Like people are rolling their own LLMs. I don't think it needed to take this long, but that's another conversation. That's when that's going to be in a year. And then 2 years, they're saying that's when all the app developers, that's when our own LLM, and that's when like everything we've been building up to will be realized. So this is kind of a roadmap. I hope they can speed it up. It seems like Apple's not very fast when it comes to developing software stuff. It feels like because they're a hardware company, they moved a little bit slower. They're used to like long production runs, right? Like I'm assuming they have like 2 iPhones ahead into the future already planned out, but like we're just going to, because of the time it takes to pump it off the line, we're not going to get those for a while. And so it seems like the software is sort of like followed, because a lot of this, it's like they have to tie in the software with the hardware. So maybe 2 generations of iPhone in the future, they're building this thing with amazing internal AI chips that are super powerful or designing it that way. My only thing that it kind of begs a question, though, is like in 2 years, I feel like even the chips ecosystem is going to be dramatically evolved. So I'll be curious to see. Maybe, yeah, I'm sure they have a solution for getting the most cutting edge stuff in there, but it does seem like you got to wait a long time. Drives me crazy. And it would be fine if everyone else hadn't already figured this out. Like if Alexa last week hadn't announced Alexa Plus. That's my kind of big thing. So also, that's the caveat.
It's Jaden, I don't know if there's many topics that get us more incensed than why isn't Apple doing better. Like, we're basically at time for this podcast, and it was just you and I ranting like in succession for a while. But here's the thing. Listen, there's not much more to say about this. I'll just say this. Apple will probably be fine. The devices are worth way more than the intelligence at this point, because intelligence is becoming a little bit of a AI, I mean, is becoming a little more of a commodity. And the devices are very, very hard. Apple has a huge moat. So I think they're going to be fine. I don't know what it indicates. I don't know if it's going to affect the stock or anything like that. Again, this is just a report. But listen, these are the things to keep an eye on. I wouldn't when you see like announcements by Apple and other companies saying like, we're about to do this, don't rush out and buy the new thing. Like I'll go and buy everything Apple makes because I think they're phenomenal. But just remember that these things are slow. They will catch up somehow. They have to figure this out, but it's a surprise. And it's still, like we call it as we see it right now, disappointing right now. Okay, that's the end of our rant for today. Tune in next time when we are going to rant about Apple some more. But listen, if you have enjoyed this podcast, and I don't know if you did or not, because it was we're frustrated, but that's okay. But if you did, if you take pity on us, why don't you go and leave a rating and review? But make it a 5-star review still, because we love you and you love us. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.